this is Galahad19, and this was going to be Invincible Characters as Dragons, but I'm going a little off schedule today. I was in the middle of Pokemon Sword when I got all these ideas for today's video, and I hope you like the finished result, so let's go!
Alrighty then, here's the tale of the Invincible Dragonius. Although it is quite vincible in my opinion.
I said it was going to be Invincible Characters as Dragons. Was! Try to pay attention.
Well, how about you narrate? And I run the YouTube channel. Freelance Studios has a better ring to it than a Camelot night with a dog, you unorganized nitwit. That's it. Now I'm making it canon that freelance is not your maiden name. Why, you piece of...
One heated argument later.
You know what? I'm gonna draw a big curly mustache on your upcoming character reveal.
One fist fight later.
Alrighty now, with that all wrapped up. The story begins when I took part of an expedition through the city ruins of Palatos. Now, right now I imagine you saying, but he's the dragon nerd, not an archaeologist. Give us some scaly action and lizard-like wonder. Well, these ruins are connected to a dungeon, where it is rumored to have a ferocious beast guarding some great treasure. But to be quite honest, I'm more interested in the beastie. Some say it's a giant green snake. Others say it's a lizard-like lava golem. And I'm saying, let me in that dungeon. The archaeology group I was tagging along with wasn't thrilled of the idea. They just wanted to go through tapestry and broken pottery, so I stuck away from them and ventured forth on my own. Now, the dungeon was like a mashup of an underground labyrinth and a thriving ecosystem with running water, strange plants, and all sorts of creatures roaming about. Now, much of it was in darkness, with the only light source coming from my torch. And yet, it was a nice enough scene for me to take in. Although there were the few odd attacks from a crystal-eyed gremlin, a dire bat, and a stubby stone golem, but I dealt with them easily. A few swings with my longsword and they were off in the other direction. Then, shortly after that, I came across these paintings along the dungeon walls. They weren't in great condition, but I could make out Palatos' history, starting off as a village of a few hundred who were living under the tyrannical heel of a gang of bandits, pleading them dry of every last coin. But all of that changed one day when a lonesome beast catcher named Ashford managed to tame a Joltix dire rat, a small to mid-sized creature that generates an absurd amount of static electricity through its fuzzy yellow coat. And against all odds, this unlikely pair sent those bandits blasting off. The bandits did return a few weeks later with greater numbers, but by that time, Ashford had tamed 5 more creatures, including a great fire dragon. They sent those miscreants blasting off again. And upon witnessing this heroic act, others in the community turned to Ashford to learn his ways. And a few decades later, Palatos had become this thriving city of beast tamers, hosting dragon tournaments and experimenting with magic gemstones and enchanted artifacts. My kind of people. And then they got into this war of the Giovanni Empire, and then the rest of their mural was too faded to make heads or tails out of. So enough about their story. Let's get back to mine. Now I made it to the treasury, and it was disappointing. Besides from the odd skeleton, there was no sign of any creature. In the midst of dust and cobwebs, there was only but one treasure, a red crystal orb sitting on a pedestal. And there was writing on that pedestal, a clear enough warning to not touch the orb. So I went and touched it anyway. Wasn't gonna go home empty-handed, so I carefully and simultaneously swapped the orb with a rock in case the pedestal was pressure sensitive. I backed away, surveyed the room, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then the orb started glowing in my hand, and that's when I remembered the part of the story that said magic gemstones. Then all of a sudden, the room was engulfed in a blinding light. And then came a deafening roar.
We interrupt this broadcast for a special bulletin. A video of me walking along the Tower Bridge on my last trip to London. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Now the flash was so intense that I stumbled backwards, dropping the orb and nearly lost my balance. But then my instincts kicked in. I drew my long sword and took a battle stance with my feet firmly planted. And when my vision returned, I saw this big burly foot stomping onto the skeleton's hollowed out skull, spewing out fumes of dust as it was crushed. I looked up and I saw this big, humanoid orange behemoth with 4 arms and 3 flaming heads. And the craziness didn't stop there. The room began shaking unnaturally, as if each brick had developed a mind of their own. Light was seeping in through the cracks, and then the walls and ceiling all broke away. Or should I say, moved away. I wasn't in the dungeon anymore. I wasn't even in the city ruins anymore. As the dust started to settle, my mind slowly caught up with what I was seeing. I was in a pocket dimension. It all looked something like a beach, with pinkish crystals sticking out from white sand, and crabs the size of small dogs roaming about. I found myself standing next to a waterfall that was flowing upwards instead of down. And from the top of that waterfall came down a dragon with 2 heads, one resembling a lizard, while the other was that of a bird, with axe-like protrusions coming from either side of its skull. This creature had flames perpetually emanating from its heads, wings, and end of its tail, leaving a trail of sparks as it flew over my head. I was starting to get a better understanding of my predicament. That orb contained a powerful curse that sent me here, all while merging the essence from multiple creatures, creating these chimeras. Quite the convoluting plot twist, but at least we're getting some world building. Watch it, wise guy, or your character reveal will come with butt teeth and devil horns. Cole, what you... Now the flying chimera spat out. You should give them names. It will make it easier for the viewers to follow. Okay then. The flying chimera is called the flaming salamancerus. And the big bulky one is the blazing Monchaka ape. Now with that out of the way, the salamancerus from its 2 heads spewed a ray of green fire in my direction. So I dove away from the inferno, rolled across the sand, and got to my feet just in time to parry the Monchaka ape's fist with the blunt end of my sword. But then it swung its 3 extra fists. I dodged one, I blocked another, but one went into my side, sending me flying 10 feet along the beach. And just then, another stream of green fire struck the ground between me and the Monchaka ape. I managed to block the worst of it with my blade. And just as the flames cleared, I then noticed a crab 5 times the size as the others came crawling in from the ocean. I looked back and the salamancerus was soaring in for another strike, so I ran to the water. I leapt on top of the crab creature. From there, I jumped upwards while swinging my longsword, slicing a gash into the chimera's wing. Its flaming body fell into the ocean, with sprays of water and plumes of steam cascading. I looked over to the Monchaka ape, which was stomping towards me, so I pulled back my wrist-mounted crossbow and fired 2 shots. One hitting a pink crystal, while the other struck the ground just inches from the creature's foot. But I missed nothing. The arrow sticking from the ground crackled with red streaks of electricity, morphing the sands around it into strands of tendrils that coiled round the creature's ankles. But before I could react, another set of tendrils wrapped round its waist. This one made from crystal shards with red sparks running through them. And while I was struggling, I fastened a blue arrow and turned to the salamancerus, which was bounding out from the water. The flames along its body may have been out, but it was still able to spew its green fire at me. I fired my arrow into the inferno, and it exploded into shards of ice and freezing mist. Now, did I forget to mention I dabble in magic artifacts? The ice trailed back to the creature, freezing over parts of its body. I then charged at it with my sword raised high. The creature lunged its 2 heads at me. But in one swipe, I cut the bird axe-looking head clean off, then drove my sword into the creature's chest. It cried out in a growl before dying, but then I was struck from behind by a flying crystal. My sword slipped from my grip as I hit the ground. I looked up and saw the Monchaka ape leaping through the air, about to stomp me flat. But I managed to reach over to the severed head of the Salamancer and used it as a shield. But I was still pushed even deeper into the dirt under such a heavy blow. So I cried out and thrusted the axe-like horns into the creature's stomach, tearing a massive wound. I then rolled over to my sword. The Monchaka ape swung its fist, but I spun around and chopped it off. And as it cried out in pain, I fastened a gold-colored arrow to my wrist-mounted crossbow. I then swung my fist into the creature's chest and fired my arrow into the already open wound in its stomach. I quickly leapt back as the arrowhead expanded into a 10-foot golden blade, slicing the chimera creature in half. Shortly after that, the terrain shifted back into the dungeon. The chimeras disappeared in red smoke, and I made sure to smash that red orb to make sure no one fell victim to that curse again. But as I left that dungeon, I had a feeling that curse wasn't done with me.
Now, I had intended to do 3 drawings, but I was really pushed for time and went with quality over quantity. I am open to another round of this, so feel free to comment up to 3 or more Pokemon you want to see mashed together as a chimera creature. And while you're at it, like, subscribe, and get excited. For my next video, I'm going back to 5 Nights of Pokemon.
Hi, Galahound! How's the eye?
Gah! You know what? They say the pen is stronger than the sword. Well, I'm armed with both! Be sure to check out Yu-Gi-Oh! Venomized and my Comic-Con playlist. Now come here, you two-dimensional dummy!